Thanks everybody for attending. I'm really excited to talk about some ways that Sauce Labs is helping teams optimize their mobile app lifecycle management. We'll jump right into it. Just a quick introduction. My name is Michael Donovan. I'm the VP of Product at Sauce Labs. Been here for about 2 years, and my background really is in engineering. I spent 15 years as a software engineer, leading engineering teams, running QA, building mobile apps, web apps of all kinds. And then I sort of turned to product management, and now I get to have the best of both worlds, where I get to build products for developers. When I'm not doing product work or thinking about how to make developers' lives easier, I'm usually at home either with my kids and brewing beer. Sometimes brewing beer with my kids. I'm a big home brewer, so feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk about this. Generally speaking, this stuff all the time. So we're going to kick it off by talking about some of the different personas in the mobile app development process, and kind of why mobile apps are a little bit of a different challenge than building other kinds of web applications. When you are building mobile apps, there are usually those teams, what we find, are smaller. There's less engineers responsible for even more scope because you've got your different platforms that you're developing applications for. Yet you've still got a lot of different people that have to be involved in that overall process. And some of those different personas that we see, right, are sort of sharing the builds and applications between other developers, right? Being able to have another developer test the application as it's currently standing on your branch to get some quick feedback. You've also got product managers, maybe like myself, who are receiving a build of that mobile app, its current latest version. So maybe you can verify a story that was just finished, mid-sprint maybe. You've also got your QA and QE engineers ready in test, right? That you need to hand over that build to. Again, it's not necessary. It could be the latest version after a specific JIRA ticket was finished, just so that they can validate that story. You've also got eventually beta testers involved in the process. So after your sprint's over or you're getting ready for that next release, it's critical to get validation and feedback from real world users, and that's what you do in a beta program. And then you have to distribute it eventually to the App Store, right? And get it out there in the hands of, get it into production. And that could be either a brand new application, which obviously goes through a more rigorous review process by the app stores, or just an update, right? And that's another pain point. And then when it's in production, you've got to get that feedback from your end user. And this is really the key point of interaction and key persona to be interacting and incorporating into your process as much as possible is your end user. And so we see again small teams, there's less engineers on these mobile app teams, but the scope is large and the number of people that you have to interact with grows. And all these different people also bring with it a host of tools, a big suite of tools that they need in order to make their life and their job easier, right? Because everybody has a particular tool that makes their part of the process a little better. And so we see that the adoption of all these different people and more tools is making the different tech stack really more complicated. The dev tooling stack across development, test, and production more complicated throughout the development lifecycle. And so generally what we have been seeing from teams, the challenges that they're facing, right, is that we are seeing more tests being executed, right? More testing that's happening throughout the mobile app development process. We talked about more people and all the different personas involved in the process. And then we talked about how those people and application stacks are bringing more tools than ever into the tech stacks. And all that complexity is really delaying the development process overall for mobile apps to go from new idea all the way to release. So we want to pivot now to how Sauce Labs is trying to address some of these challenges, because it's really what our focus is, right? In product, we're here to make sure that we solve problems that development teams are facing throughout the mobile app process, and so we're really focused on how we address those challenges. And the way we think about this is across these three different themes. So depth, collaboration, and acceleration. What we mean by depth is really how can we help you understand why the particular failure happened or error happened, whether that's in test, whether that's in your production. But we want to, as the poll survey results showed, most people are spending a lot of time or having the most challenges understanding why the problem happened. And so when we think of what Sauce Labs is doing here, we're thinking about how can we add more depth to the type of services we provide throughout the mobile app development process. On the collaboration piece, this is really recognizing that many different people are involved in the process of getting mobile apps out the door to production, but also fixing errors, fixing test failures, and we recognize that this is software development is really a team sport, and you have to get your fellow teammates involved in the process and make the handoff of information easy. And then on the acceleration piece, every development team, across the world is trying to move as fast as possible, but we do so responsibly. And so we want to do everything we can to help you test as fast as possible and resolve it. And sometimes that might not necessarily mean it might mean rethinking your testing strategy and utilizing different types of tests, which we'll talk a little more about. So with those three pillars in mind, there's some use cases that we're starting to develop at Sauce Labs. Some of these have been talked about in previous sessions, but we'll go into them a little bit at a high level. But it's what we're doing to help solve some of these challenges in those three different themes. The first is mobile app diagnostics. I know Christian talked about this earlier. But this is really all about how can we help teams debug faster, debug their test failures faster, find the root cause, and then get it resolved as quickly as possible. So these are some key questions that drive the different capabilities within mobile app diagnostics. I want to know where the code error is happening, why did my app crash, and what's really happening so that I can go from that failed test to a green test as fast as possible. Some of the highlights of mobile app diagnostics are those interactions. So whenever you view the test results within Sauce Labs from a real device test, whether it be manual or automated, you're able to see these interactions. So the swipes, the taps, the scrolls. You're able to see the network logs that are being captured throughout the execution of that test. Again, no matter if it's live or manual. And the network capture is going to give you a visual representation of those network calls. It's not shown in the screenshot, but it looks just like Chrome Dev Tools or something you're familiar with, where it highlights all the individual API calls. But we're also going to create a network HAR file for you so that you can download it and load it into your favorite network viewing tool in case you have one. We also have device vitals available, which show the CPU performance throughout the timeline of the test, the memory performance. Maybe there's a memory leak. Maybe there's a memory leak that's causing your app to be too slow. And then also the UI responsiveness. So you can see how well did that UI respond to those taps and those clicks, because all of those things together can really give you a sense of where that failure maybe originated from so that you can resolve it as fast as possible. And then finally, the integration of the Backtrace product into mobile app diagnostics now shows if there's any errors or crashes that happened throughout that test in the application code itself, then those will surface to you all in one place, all in one interface that's purpose-built for really debugging these kinds of failures and getting everyone on your team to look at it. Next, when we think about the depth theme, we have recently launched pattern analysis. And this is something I'm really excited about because this is, Sauce Labs we've executed a lot of tests. We just surpassed our 5 billionth test last month. And that is all that scale means a lot of data. And when you have that much data, you're able to build fairly unique algorithms that deliver more value, that really help improve your testing practice. And so what pattern analysis does is it allows you, it identifies the root cause of the issue and really helps you not have to debug each individual failure, more just understand which patterns, which failure patterns need to be looked at and fixed so that you can then have all your tests pass. Just some quick walkthrough of this. After you execute your test, like a whole build of tests, say you're executing 1,000 tests as part of your CI process in Sauce Labs, we'll analyze that entire CI build. And it's not, it takes a few CI builds because we want to see the patterns as they show up, but we will identify those common failure reasons across that build. So say if you had 1,000 tests executed, maybe 100 failed. Instead of having to go in and debug each test in that failure set, we'll identify the common failure patterns. Maybe in this example, there's 7 failure patterns across those tests. This is basically telling you that if you fix those 7 failure patterns, then all the tests will pass, right? And so it saves teams a tremendous amount of time debugging each of those failures, instead just focused on the failure patterns that matter. And then in the interface, we're also able to give you some root cause analysis. It's this command that failed, or it's this line of code that was the reason for those failures, so that you can, again, get that information as quickly as possible and fix it as quickly as possible without having to go through the debugging and recreation process of a failure. When we think about collaboration, one of the really amazing features here is how we're getting feedback, how we're enabling collaboration of the mobile app development process between all those different personas through our mobile beta testing solution. And one of the key things or key experiences here is how to get quicker feedback from your beta tester users, right? And so when you come into Sauce Labs, we have our mobile beta testing solution, which if you're executing your beta programs through our solution, then with all of your beta testers, they're able to not only get access to your application before it hits any of the stores, right, in a private or public beta, but you're also able to collect feedback from those beta testers, which I've always found in my experience to be one of the more difficult processes of a beta testing experience, is getting that feedback from users as they are using and experiencing your application, most likely finding bugs, right? That's going to happen. And you want to get all that information about their experience as quickly as possible so that you can resolve it and get more and more feedback. So it is just some images from our mobile beta testing solution showing you the session that the beta tester was completing, the interactions they did leading up to maybe that bug, as well as some of those same statistics, right? What were the memory? What was the CPU like? How well was the UI reacting? And then a look at some screenshots. So really great context on how to solve some of these failures. On the and then on the acceleration piece, we talked a little bit about the failure patterns and how our pattern analysis and how that helps you identify those failure patterns to, again, like accelerate your pipelines, not have to waste time debugging. I'll talk a little bit more about how to start to adopt different testing strategies instead of relying on maybe slower tests or harder to maintain tests. And then also just want to make sure we mention that a big part of acceleration is scaling and parallelization. And especially in the mobile space, that's where our emulators and simulators come into play. We see that as a big differentiator on how to scale mobile app testing overall, instead of for many functional test cases, emulators and simulators we believe are the way to go in order to scale that in a cost-effective way. But one of the key acceleration capabilities that we're bringing to market is that ability to create API tests from existing functional tests. So with our API testing solution, what you're able to do is, with any functional test that was run, so say you have an Appium test that you're running on a real device and it's executing a set of steps, those set of steps are also invoking your API backend. And our API testing tool is as a functional API testing tool. So it allows you to string together multiple API calls and make assertions along the way, so that you make sure the entire test case is successful. We have this capability to seamlessly migrate from a functional mobile test into an API test, and with the click of a button. So that really helps with the seamless adoption of API testing. If you're maybe trying to experiment with API testing, and if you can, it doesn't always have to be that you're trying to replace a functional UI test. You maybe just are augmenting your testing strategy with API testing, because API tests we normally see integrated earlier in your build pipelines so that you get faster feedback to developers as your applications are being developed. And so as we look at all these capabilities and how we're trying to solve mobile app development challenges along the way, we're really looking at the entire development process, from development to integration testing to production. And Sauce Labs is really bringing to market a comprehensive platform that allows you to improve your testing along the way, and use different capabilities that suit your needs. Because what we definitely see is every development team has their own set of challenges, because there's different people involved, many personas that you have to deal with, and different scopes of work, basically, all brought together with a system that is bringing you those insights that help you develop better. And so what I just showed you was really just the beginning. Our strategy and roadmap will continue to develop with these same themes in mind. And thank you for your time. Maybe take some questions. I haven't checked out the chat.
Thank you, Mike, for the great session. We do have some questions for you around how does Sauce Labs error reporting in production also helps team with pre-production testing?
Yeah, so one of the big maybe changes that we've seen in quality practices is the incorporation of behavior in production into your quality practice in pre-production. And so understanding your user's behavior in production is what our error reporting tool can brings you, right? It's able to track all the different errors that happen, prioritize them, understand which users are being impacted, and you can use that information not only to resolve those errors, but also to make sure you're testing the right things, right? Those errors maybe are getting into production, and you might not have the right coverage over that, or maybe you need to double down in certain areas because they are receiving a little more, instability. So I look at it as taking those insights from the behavior in production of your end users and the errors that are happening to make sure that you're building the right test.
Yes, that makes sense. And you touched upon this already, but can you dive a little bit more into how the Sauce Labs Real Device Cloud and mobile beta testing integration currently works?
Yeah, so currently there's really the main integration is it happens automatically, right? So a lot of our mobile beta testing capabilities are tracking what's happening as the mobile app is being used by an end user, right? One of the innovations that we did was integrate that now while your test is being executed. And that all happens automatically as part of our instrumentation process before an application runs. And that's where you're able to get all of that session information, interactions, device vitals, and you don't have to you don't have to write any other line of code. It's just going to happen automatically.
Wonderful. As you were showing the challenges around mobile app development, we did have a comment from Carl around, the apps built in Jetpack. They're building the apps in Jetpack Compose, so unable to test easily on our devices, and they're finding, the robust and reliable locators within the Jetpack Compose framework, basically saying, the technology is moving so fast. So I don't know, Mike, if you have any comment on this, or do you want to follow up? You can follow up that later after the event as well.
Yeah, I think we should definitely follow up and maybe dive deeper into how to make those tests and using Sauce Labs with that framework more reliable. But I definitely, I think, sympathize with this comment by Carl about just the complex tooling, right? It's the mobile app space is complicated for many reasons, and especially because the tech stacks are changing all the time, right? Of the mobile apps themselves, the tooling for QA, the tooling for DevOps, it's just it's a very interesting and complicated space.
Yes, and I believe Shanti has a last comment on chat there. API testing is manual and automation. That's all.
Yes, yeah. So you can use our API testing solution to invoke API calls manually and validate them if you wanted to. But really, where the power is all about the automation, right? And so you're able to create an API testing script, right? That then gets invoked as frequently as you want as part of your build process or on a regular schedule. And again, that the power what really excites me is really that it's a functional API testing tool. And so you're able to do that, augment your testing strategy with functional API tests that string together multiple API calls, rather than just, sort of the bare bones, or at least rather than just relying on the bare bones API test of what's my inputs and outputs. This is now what's my user interaction through that API test.